It looks like I can. Oh yeah, okay. Looks like it's recording.
All right, well, I'm just gonna keep an eye on the chat box then.
Just want to welcome everybody first to, I think this is our third JayTalk, and we hope that these have been helpful. We sent a calendar at the beginning of the year. We'll, as the months progress, about the topics that we will be discussing, and they're relevant for folks at different places in the program, and we hope that it's helpful, especially for those that are coming to, in this instance, a place where candidacy is important. Can you share your screen, Dr. Bloomquist, or is that not going to work? Does that take it? There you go. Oh, perfect. Great. Yep, so tonight we're just going to spend a bit of time talking about candidacy. First, I'll spend a bit of time discussing the basic principles around candidacy, some of the nitty-gritty details, and then we'll talk about how to succeed in candidacy. So we're not giving away any real secrets here, but we do want to be sure that we have a chance to share with you some of the best practices that we've seen from students. And if you would, just as a reminder, while you're popping on and off, be sure to mute if you would. You're welcome to pop in, ask questions anytime, unmute yourself, but while we're presenting and others are talking, go ahead and mute if you would, to just prevent some background noise. So Dr. Candice Bloomquist will be monitoring the chat box along the way, so please ask questions as they arise. I know there will be questions, and we're really happy to answer those. And this is meant to be informal. So unmute your video if you'd like, unmute your audio if you'd like, if it's available to you. We'd like this to be a conversation. So I'd like to start just by talking about the intention of candidacy a little bit. I'm going to steal the screen back, Dr. Bloomquist, for a bit here. If I may, perhaps, share screen. Okay, perfect. Perfect, so some of you have seen this before, and I talked about this at orientation in a lot of ways, that nothing's really changed. So candidacy in our program is, the intention is really to provide students with an opportunity to demonstrate that to the faculty in our program, graduate level writing skills, higher order thinking skills, and an ability to apply your knowledge to address real world problems. Now, I'll talk about when we attempt candidacy here in a bit, but this is just a reminder of what we talked about maybe for some of you a year and a half ago. Some of you might be looking very soon here at candidacy, but it's really a chance for you as students to demonstrate your preparedness to complete a dissertation in practice. And as you know, this serves as the COMPS, or comprehensive exam, for our program. So we talk a lot about the intention of candidacy, and when we develop candidacy in the EDD program, it's not to be something that is a weeding out process. So the intention of candidacy is not to cut a third of our students or something crazy. It's to make sure that you are well prepared to write a dissertation. A dissertation is no small weekend endeavor. I know I certainly have crafted papers in as little as a weekend, maybe less, when I've had that time. But candidacy is simply not that type of process, nor is a dissertation. And we want to be sure that you are prepared to do that well, especially because it's an independent writing endeavor. We know through the candidacy process, which is an independent practice, that is, we don't provide writing support, for instance, or feedback from instructors as you've been getting in courses to this point. We don't provide that kind of feedback. Now in the dissertation, of course, you'll have that kind of feedback, but that point in our program is where students are working independently. They're not working in that Thursday, Sunday, Thursday deadline sort of cycle, where they're getting iterative feedback along the way. So we want candidacy to be a chance for students to practice that independent work, to really synthesize thought. And we'll talk about some of those best practices. Candidacy is certainly not something to overlook. It's something to plan for. It is most certainly not a time to panic. And we have seen this happen before, and it feels like a high bar. In many ways it is. Students do have 2 attempts at candidacy, but students must pass candidacy ultimately to move on to the dissertation and practice phase. Now, again, here's some of the nitty-gritty stuff, just as that reminder. I know several of you are coming up on this point in the program, so I want to talk about some of these details. So our students are eligible to apply for candidacy or write their candidacy essays when they've completed 32 hours of credit in the EDD program. That doesn't include transfer credits. And students who are in lockstep in our program or who have followed the plan of study since the beginning write their candidacy essays the 8-week term following completion of 890 and 899E. Now, if you've stepped out of the program for any reason, let's say you popped out for a term, you took off an elective or a core class, and you're taking 890, 899E, but you're not quite to 32 credits when those courses are finished, your candidacy window might be a couple of 8-week terms later or the following 8-week term. But students are eligible when they've completed 32 hours. Now, students do need to obtain candidacy by the end of the 8-week term immediately following that 32-hour completion, which is no problem. And of course, if we don't apply for candidacy, you're not eligible to register for subsequent credit hours. So it really is something that we need to tackle. Assuming students, of course, follow that plan of study, you fill out the request for candidacy link in the Student Resource Center. You'll find the candidacy manual there. By August 1st, I can't, of course, I can't see the side of my screen here, so you'll have to tell me if it's 2018 or 19. I've got faces blocking it there. And then to prepare for candidacy, summer break 2019, for instance, these are folks that started in 2017. So this will depend on your potential or specific start date in the program. But for most students, it's when they completed 890 and 899E. Now, as a quick note, candidacy is not part of a course, but it occurs at the same time as another class. So we don't write candidacy essays during the summer break or the holiday break. Students write during an 8-week term. But again, it does happen at the same time as a class. Now, I'm going to give you some details here in a moment, but here's some high-level tips for success in candidacy. The first thing I would suggest is reading the candidacy manual. I could spend an hour walking through what's in the manual, but I know it's pretty thorough because I wrote it, and I can't do anything that isn't detailed to a fault. So there's good stuff in there, and I want you to take a look at it when you have time. And when you have questions, certainly ask, but the details and when you apply and the like are in there. It's also, as I said, not a time to panic, but be planful. So in preparing for candidacy, we'll talk about, again, some best practices here in just a moment. The best approaches are the most planful approaches. So if you're taking, I know I use this example frequently, a Disney cruise in weeks 3 and 4 of the term that you're going to be writing your candidacy essays, don't write your candidacy essays during weeks 3 and 4 while you're on a Disney cruise. You should enjoy your cruise. Likewise, to this point, you've probably noticed that substantial papers are typically due in week 7 or 8 of courses, and I have talked with students that want to, wait till that last 2 weeks to write their candidacy essays. You do have 14 days to write those essays, but remember, if it's a busy term and you have some substantial papers due, it may not be the best choice then to write your candidacy essays while you're writing a 24-page paper for a class at the same time. So think through that, talk with your family about when you'll be most available. But use that planning period wisely. And I say planning period because oftentimes there's a summer break before the writing window or a holiday break before the writing window. And we encourage students to use that time to review past coursework, to look back at things that maybe they were less comfortable or familiar with, maybe theories that you were less clear about, and just take a look. Read a bit more about those so you have a firm understanding should those theories or concepts or opportunities come up in one of the 2 essays that we ask about. You can answer those thoughtfully, or it won't look like a term you've never seen before, for instance. Do we suggest reading every book on every theory to prepare for candidacy? No, we don't. We're not going to ask you anything that you haven't seen before, at least in some capacity. It'll be a different application, to be sure. But it won't be something that comes from an undergraduate biology textbook, for instance. And then I say this every time I have an opportunity to talk about candidacy, and more often than I'd like to admit, we see errors of the low-hanging fruit type, is what I call them. So when we review candidacy essays, we sometimes see errors that are proofreading in nature. So you can imagine it may be a bit off-putting to have a typo in the first sentence of the abstract in the very first candidacy paper you write. The paper may be beautiful and flawless or close, but that first typo, whether it should or shouldn't be, is distracting, at least to a reviewer. So set your reviewer up to succeed. Let them hear what you're trying to say in your essays, and don't make them muddle through errors or especially APA challenges, and let us get to really the content of your paper. We want to see that you know how to answer those questions thoughtfully, and that's really, I think, the key. So address those low-hanging fruit things, the APA stuff, the grammatical issues, the different font in the header, those typical APA things you've been receiving feedback about across the semesters or terms in the program don't go away at Candidacy. And before I get to a couple of other high-level things, talk with your faculty advisor. No, we can't proofread your essays for you, but we can certainly talk to you about strategy, how to approach your candidacy writing window, for instance, how to best set yourself up to succeed in that instance. So I stopped sharing my screen here, but I do want to talk a little bit more here. Let me see if I can pop out of this. Perfect. So I do want to talk a little bit more about some of these opportunities here. One of the things that we've seen recently, and I'm just going to give us 4 additional tips or things that we as faculty have been discussing or talking about that are best practices really in what we see in some of the best essays or best submissions. The best essays answer the question. And I know that sounds so elementary and silly to say out loud, but some of the questions may be multi-part. In fact, all questions are multi-component or have several components to the question. Well, often, sometimes, what we'll see is students beautifully answer half of the question and neglect the second half. Or it'll ask about a specific theory, but the theory isn't mentioned. The essay is gorgeous. It's beautifully constructed. It's synthesized thoughtfully. It meets all the parameters of a candidacy submission, but it doesn't answer the question. So be sure when you're answering your candidacy essays, you're answering them fully, every corner of the question. And we can talk strategy about how to do that, to be sure, but I want to make sure that we talk about that as well. The second thing I would note is take your time in editing. And in fact, I think just like most writing, the writing doesn't take as long as the editing, or at least for me, I found I write quickly and I edit slowly. I've heard people say, and I don't mean this literally, write drunk, edit sober, right? It's that just get it on paper and then give yourself time to construct and deconstruct and move things around and walk away and come back. To do that, though, means we don't start on day 13 of our 14-day writing window. Now, with that in mind, I said be planful, and I think the faculty would all agree that the best approach to do this is to craft that outline of each essay. Sure, each essay is 5 pages, which doesn't feel like much, and in fact it isn't much, and that's one of the challenges of writing these essays, I think, as well. But outline what you'd like to say ahead of time. In that way, you ensure that you have hit every corner of the question in the way that you'd like, and there's a lot of flexibility in how to answer these questions. There's no yes, no, right, wrong in many of these. But it's how deeply you defend your arguments, think through your approach. So thoughtfully plan, think, give yourself a couple of days potentially to think about what you'd like to write before even you decide on which essays you'd like to. Remember, you have choices, 2 from each category, you choose 1. And then once you've outlined well, craft and write and give yourself permission to write over the 5 pages or under the 5 pages, and then spend some substantial time editing, not just for grammar, but for content as well, and flow, and all those really good writing practices. And then when you're writing, as I noted, many of these essay prompts are multi-component or have multiple perspectives or pieces to pull into your answer. Continue to practice synthesis of writing and thought. And you see in many of the rubrics in our program, synthesis is a piece of that. So you've had a lot of practice in that approach. Candidacy is no different. Headings are good, subheadings are always good. Transitional thoughts and phrases are even better. Tying components to the next component is important. Thinking about how the beginning ties to the end is almost even more important in a 5-page paper. So tell a beautiful story, wrap it up with a nice bow, and make sure things flow beautifully so it's not fact, 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 but instead thought leads to the next thought, which is different from the following thought, but all comes together here in this last piece is one approach. And then the last thing I'll say about just how to succeed in candidacy, or the best practices that we see, is apply the feedback that you've been receiving in the program. So everything has led you to this point. so far. It sounds very high bar. It sounds really lofty. Everything has brought you here. The feedback you've received from instructors, though I understand after an 8-week class, it's easy to look at the grade and put it aside. Go back and look at the feedback with the intention of applying it to candidacy. Is there something that you've learned across all of your reviewers, all of your instructors? Have they said you write in passive voice? Be sure then in your crafting your essays that you're attuned to that tendency and edit just for active voice potentially. Or if they commented on synthesis of thought, know that's something to consider. Have you received APA feedback? Be sure to apply that here. Now, once you receive that feedback, use the feedback. We ask too that you apply it at the back end of candidacy as well. So you'll receive fairly substantive feedback from both reviewers. And there's 2 outcomes to candidacy, at least on the first attempt. The first is that you pass. Again, it's really easy to see the pass, and you should celebrate. It's a huge accomplishment. But also take a look at that feedback. We're still giving really thorough feedback on the passes because it's important for you to know that what you did well, but there's almost always area for improvement. We haven't had a perfect candidacy score, I imagine, because we want you to grow. You're only 32 hours into the program at candidacy. It's not to be flawless. It should include opportunity for growth, and we'll see that happen across the dissertation phase. So just know that there's still room to move and look at the feedback that we give you. Think about it. Reach out to us as faculty advisors if you'd like to talk through it. We'd be really happy to. Likewise, if you receive a no pass on that first attempt, and it does happen, take a look at that feedback. Talk with your faculty advisor. Think about it for a day or two. Look back at your essays. Whether you agree with the feedback or not, it's what the reviewers saw. So how then can you modify your existing essays to not just meet the reviewer's feedback, but write the best essays that you can? So we hope that you apply that feedback in a couple of ways, in the best case scenario and in the more challenging scenario of no pass in the first attempt. So I spoke nonstop for the last 16 minutes, and that's not really my approach. I also am trying not to kill us by PowerPoint. So I would love to see what types of questions you have, and I'd be happy to answer those. Dr. Bloomquist is monitoring the chat box. You're welcome to unmute yourself as well and ask questions. Dr. Ford and Dr. Bloomquist, I know you're on here too, so please do pop in. You read as many candidacy essays as every faculty, so I'd love to see what you have to say or thoughts as well, if you have questions. And Joe, I saw you sent me a note behind the scenes. I can certainly answer that via email or afterwards, or if you'd like me to reply to the whole class, I certainly can. Just let me know.
Yeah, Dr. Georges, you were talking about editing, which is, I would absolutely echo that as well. And sometimes we have the question about editing services, and you might want to share with the group what it means to do this candidacy on their own.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for the clarity. So when you look at the manual, you'll see very clearly that there is a note that, and actually you sign when you fill out your request for candidacy via the Blue Line link, or a Blue Q link rather. Editing services are not allowed. And editing is anything from a peer, for a spouse, to a friend, a coworker reading your work, to smart thinking, to previous course instructors. This is to be fully independent work. So you're thinking, you're writing, your independent editing of what you've crafted. And we do that not to create more stress, but our hope is that you have received thoughtful feedback across the curriculum so far. And we want to see how you can apply the feedback that you've received and transfer to a new set of writing opportunity, 10 total pages. So you do sign something that says you won't work independent, or you will only work independently. And unfortunately, smart thinking is one of those editing services type things. We ask you to do that not to be a giant pain, right? But because of the rigor of a dissertation, we want to know that you have the skill set to craft those, to work independently. Again, you'll have opportunity for feedback, but the dissertation is really an independent endeavor where it's your paper. It's your 100 and something page project, potentially. We want to be sure that you're set up to do that. Dr. Bloomquist, Chris asked a question about historical percentages of passes and no passes on candidacy attempts. I'm asking you because you're the most closely affiliated with that data. Do you know if there's a generally what we see?
Yep, I was just actually going into my file to grab that number. So it's for the process that we're currently using with the essays, it's a 65% pass rate on the first attempt. The second attempt pass rate is in the high 90s, like second attempts. You'll come through because we give, like Dr. Dory said, we give a lot of formative feedback. So we have about a 65% first attempt pass rate.
Perfect, thank you. So Joe Friona asked a question, and there may be others in the class that are in this situation as well. I don't know, but I would like to address it. So Joe's a returning student, and he asked a question about the previous candidacy approach. So students that, let me give some background, Joe, and I'll answer your question here. Students admitted as of August 2016 write the 2 candidacy essays. That's the only approach that they may use. Students admitted prior to August 2016 were admitted under an e-portfolio candidacy approach, and you can find that manual still in the Student Resource Center as well. Students that were admitted prior to August 2016 may use the e-portfolio approach. They also may choose the candidacy essay approach. So August 2016 and after, the only option is essays. Prior to August 2016, e-portfolio or the essay approach. Now, Joe's question is whether he should focus on theories and the required courses and electives, and then speak to the CARES and then learning outcome choice set. I'd love to see if others are interested in the e-portfolio or if they're eligible for it. If you are, just reply yes in the chat for me if you would. It's sort of a different rubric entirely, Joe. It's a different process, so we're not even looking to grade in the same way. My best advice is to look at that manual specifically because really they're different. We're looking to review previous works written in the program versus new essays. The outcomes that you're asked about, the charism and learning outcome choice set, they're different approaches. You're uploading old artifacts potentially, or you will be. I'm trying to remember exactly. You're writing to the 9 learning outcomes, whereas we've adopted 7 learning outcomes, which is really what we're most interested in when it comes to the old approach. So I'll send you a note behind the scenes, Joe. I'm watching for people to say yes. I haven't seen anybody yet, but please do reach out to me or your faculty advisor, and we can talk strategy about how to really meet you there in the old line learning outcomes in that e-portfolio approach. I'd be really happy to help. I see a couple questions coming in. Andrea asked about whether the writing workshop is important to succeed at candidacy, or how important the writing workshop is to succeed at candidacy. It's a great question. So historically, we have had some students come to the writing workshop to work on their candidacy essays, but what we've heard from those students is that they're really coming because their life is nuts where they are, and they just need 3 or 4 days to work on candidacy away from business, family, kids, all the typical things of home. So they come to get some quiet time and space and also some support. So we've had some students that have really enjoyed coming and just write during the day, enjoy time with friends in the evening, regroup and get some of that support. Now, at the writing workshop, we were just talking about this with faculty not too long ago, there will be no magical secrets about candidacy. And in fact, when students are coming to the writing workshop to learn about candidacy, we'll tell you everything there is to know in a 1-hour presentation, which is essentially what you heard now, and then everything that's in the manual. So students are absolutely welcome to come to the writing workshop anytime, most certainly for candidacy writing support. But again, because it's an independent writing endeavor, the amount of support that we can give to an individual student is a little bit limited. So it's helpful, I think, for support purposes, but I don't think it's integral or even important that students come to the writing workshop to succeed in candidacy. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know. Let's see here.
Dr. Georges, we have a question from 2 questions, both from Kevin and Chris, that are very similar about the question categories. And Chris, being bold, is asking maybe an example.
Yeah, great question. No.
Yeah.
I printed off the manual and I took it up. I'm in the basement because I have kids and they're upstairs doing kid stuff. Do you have the manual in front of you, Dr. Bloomquist? I'm trying to pull it down here so I can tell you the actual names of the categories. Do you have it close by?
I can open it up.
If you have it close, that'd be great. I was so prepared and now the document is upstairs and I'm not going to go up there with the kids because I'll never come back. Chris, I'll just answer your question boldly. Can you give a sense of the types of questions or maybe one example? So we have not given any example questions for candidacy intentionally. We're watching how the questions behave and work as well. And just as you all are answering the questions, we're assessing the questions too. So are they productive? Are they resulting in answers that we think are not confusing and the like? So we don't share the candidacy essays ahead of time. While Dr. Bloomquist is thoughtfully finding the manual for us. Thanks, Dr. Bloomquist. Mm-hmm. There are 2 categories. You do have choice. So when you receive those, and I'll talk about how to make that choice. When you receive those options, you do have 2 choices in category 1 and 2 in category 2. And I think students often find that if one of those questions doesn't resonate with them, that second choice is a good one. For instance, if a question asked about a charism of finding God in all things, but where you are in your faith journey does not suggest that finding God in all things is something that resonates with you, certainly choose the other question. Or finding God in all things is a charism potentially that we would ask you to integrate into an essay. Talk about why you don't. Remember, these candidacy essays don't require that you agree or that you believe it's good. It asks that you thoughtfully provoke and consider and compare and contrast. So if something resonates with you, talk about it. If it doesn't resonate with you, talk about why it doesn't resonate with you. Supported by fact, scholarly literature, and the like. Oh, thanks, Dr. Bloomquist. So the 2 categories here are EDD program learning outcomes and relationship to Jesuit charism. So you might imagine we may ask about a charism or 2. And maybe a learning outcome or 2. You can find all 7 of those in the Student Resource Center right under the candidacy manuals. And then an application of leadership theory. So we may ask you to choose a theory. We may give you theories to choose from. We might ask you to apply a specific theory in a specific context or different theories in a variety of contexts or your thoughts about applying theories. So they're broad intentionally because the questions are broad typically. And there's a lot of freedom to answer them differently and thus a lot of opportunity to answer them well. So I appreciate that's a cop-out answer, Chris. But Kevin, I hope that was helpful. Thank you, Dr. Bloomquist.
That was fine, actually. I get it.
Oh, okay, good. What other questions can we answer for folks? Dr. Ford, anything else you might add as a faculty?
I think you've done a really good job of summarizing the key strategies for preparing as well as how to think about it.
Sure. So Kenya asked a question. It looks, this is a nice segue. Thanks, Kenya, for letting us pop over into maybe some hot topics. So she asked if it's feasible to have a virtual writing workshop for those who cannot come to Nebraska, but would still like to gain the benefits of actual writing workshop, access to writing workshop activities or assignments that help. You know, it's a great question. And I think that's something that we have been talking about as a faculty, and this gives us good reason to talk about it even more. So Dr. Ford, Dr. Bloomquist, let's bring this back to the group and see how we might be able to, if nothing else, create solid toolboxes for people that aren't here beyond what we have now.
Yeah, thank you, Kenya, for that question. We are absolutely looking at this as a group, and we'll take it back. And we're looking at the writing workshop for the June and have some new sessions. And I'll look at seeing if I can Zoom that, or I have to think about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for asking and reminding us too. All right, so I'm up over to a couple of hot topics. So things that we're just thinking about, they're not particularly hot topics. I know Shannon, our amazing academic coach, and Lydia, I think I saw you on here as well. So our incredible staff are here. Oh, you guys are here. So make announcements as well as you see them. So just a couple of things that are on our minds. as faculty and staff in the program. So that writing workshop, remember, is June, of course, I'll leave the calendar upstairs, but the deadline to apply is May 23rd at 11:59 p.m. You do need to register online to join us, just so we know how many meals to order. But you're welcome to come. There's structured seminar, I don't want to call them seminar at all, workshop-y type opportunities, but there's a lot of time to write and work on your own as well. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's June 6th, 7th, and 8th. So you're welcome to join us. We'd love to have you. Let us know if you've got questions, but keep an eye on your emails. Monica and others have been sending notes about those. We also want you to use your social media channels and tell others about these webinars and the like. So you all are wonderful. You're checking your emails and the announcements coming from our department. Use, if you would, those social media networks. Pop into your Facebook groups, if you would. Let them know if these are helpful. I hope the answer is they're helpful. And encourage them to join us, even in real time. I know for myself, I don't get notifications about everything on my phone, but social media pops up. So a quick reminder, we would love if you would help encourage others to join us in these types of webinars, other types of announcements. Use those social media connections. We know you're beautifully connected to your cohorts and beyond. And so see that we can share with them the good work or the good information that you're learning in these webinars. Let's see if we can use these social media channels broadly. Shannon, did you want to make an announcement about registration for summer? I can certainly make that for you. I'm sure you're in a busy home just as I am. Let me make it and you can pop in and add anything. Okay, perfect. So Shannon should have everybody registered for summer and also for fall. So please double check your Nest account to be sure that your registration is accurate. She's so fantastic. She's been wonderful, and you all know this. But please double check and make sure the class that you registered for summer and then your fall courses are indeed what you intend to take. Remember, the plan of study is yours. We registered your classes. We need to make sure that you own that plan of study. So please let Shannon or your faculty advisor know if something is amiss, if something it doesn't quite look right, if you want to talk about a shift, we're really happy to do that. And then, of course, as you know, this is the week break. We hope you're enjoying it. And courses for Summer 1 open Friday, and the first day of the course proper begins on Monday. Any other announcements from us, faculty, staff, crew? Oh, thanks, Dr. Ford. The Candidacy manual is in the EDD Student Resource Center on Blue Line. Any other thoughts for good of the order? We'd love to chat. We'd love to see your faces. Perfect.
Yeah, so Dr. Georges, this is Joe.
Hi, Joe.
So, hi. So I will be taking the new version, and that one of the reasons why I'm here is to learn a little bit more about the new versus the old, right? Okay. Now, you know, here's some ideas for prepping. Review your old papers, have all your books handy, see the way in which, let's say, for instance, you addressed the Jesuit charisms in any of your reflection things, review what those reflections were like, maybe do updated searches on journal articles that would legitimately touch on Jesuit charisms or the learning outcomes, and sort of have all of those things in a handy spot before the 2 weeks, right? Now that's just a set of ideas, right? That doesn't make those the only ideas. Are there other ideas from the group like that for either set of the questions? Is that allowed to be talked about?
Yeah, no, those are great. That's great, Joe. Thanks for asking that question and giving us a chance to talk about that. I think you're spot on. So, you know, I don't think you'll need scholarly literature to show that the charisms exist because the Jesuits said so. But I do think it's wise to look back through the curriculum a bit. And the beautiful thing about, well, one of the, I guess for candidacy, one of the things about leadership theory is that there aren't as many of them potentially as there might be in psychology, for instance, or another social science field. So reorient yourself to the leadership theories that you've experienced or explored in coursework. I mean, think through the courses that you've taken. We've had a change theory class, a strategic planning class, a policy class. In 801, you talked about reflection and the Jesuit charism. So really hit all of these things. Or at least touched on them in some class. So what you said, I think, is spot on. Looking back through what you've done, as you said, we're asking about charisms. Pop open a website and take a look at what those charisms are. Remind yourself what they are. So when you see Cura Personalis or Finding God in All Things or Men and Women Forum with Others, it's not like you're reading Latin. Literally you are. I appreciate that now. But it's looking at to see exactly what does that mean? Does that resonate with me? So when you see that word, you know how that resonates with you, I think. The theory specifically, looking back through what you've done is a great approach. Of course, you're going to dig into the question that you choose. So in 5 pages, you can't answer everything. And as a result, we're not going to ask you everything about everything to answer in 5 pages. So you'll likely, I'm trying to be vague intentionally, and it's tough to do that. Dr. Bloomquist, did you have a thought? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that I mentioned to some of my advisees is around organizing their files, like spending some time to find an organization structure, putting your because a lot of your courses have additional readings, putting them in folders where you know how to get back to them, and of course using your search tool within your computer is very helpful in making sure you know how to do that, because there's a lot of resources that you've already been introduced to. The other thing, and I'm just thinking of this now, is go back to your course syllabi and look at the course objectives. What were you supposed to get out of each of the courses? Because those course objectives, you'll see every course objective within the course syllabi. We all use the same template for our syllabi. Directly relates back to one of the program learning outcomes. And the candidacy question, one of the candidacy questions talks about program learning outcomes. So if you look at your course objectives and reflect on how you've progressed and the resources and skills and tools that you've used in those courses to help you progress, it's gonna link back to a program outcome. Go back and use your syllabi in that way as well to review and understand where you are. And then Anita has a question on the chat box as well.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. I think that's a great question. So Anita asked if additional research is required for the candidacy questions or whether course materials are sufficient to answer the questions. When you take a look at the manual, you'll see, and in fact, this is articulated when you receive the questions as well. Each require this is in the manual, right, Dr. Bloomquist? Are the number of references in?
I'll double check.
Okay. Each of the essays does require a minimum number of references. I highly suggest using scholarly peer-reviewed references. So will you pull some from your coursework? Probably will, but no, I don't think any student can rely wholly on the work that they've received from their coursework. Yep. So I wasn't sure if that was in the manual, Dr. Ford. Thank you. So the charisms question, that first one requires at least 5 scholarly sources. And that leadership theory second category requires at least 10 scholarly sources that you cite. Some may come from your coursework, especially if you're reading some foundational pieces in your coursework, but many will come from outside. And so a solid literature search will be important. Great question. You're welcome, Anita. Happy to help. So Kevin asks a question, any new hot topics on the subject of prospective changes to the program, curriculum changes, new courses, etc.? Good question. So, so the short answer is no. I mean, no overhauls. I will say there's shifts, but they're good. So here's the beautiful thing, and what I want to remind all students. When you're admitted into our program, you're admitted under a specific plan of study. So when you came to orientation, you received the plan of study. You can find your plan of study in the EDD Student Resource Center. It's called EDD Program Plans of Study. find your start date along the bottom. It's an Excel document. Those are the courses that you're contracted to take with us. So we will not change the curriculum on you. We won't pull a course out and replace it with something else. Those are the courses that you take. Now, with that said, if we decide to add additional courses along the way, we of course will let all students know, and all students will have an opportunity to take some of those classes along the way. So we've had conversations about moving order of courses around potentially, but none of those will impact any of you because you've been adopted or you come in under a specific plan of study. That will never change. New courses, we pop additional and new electives in occasionally. I don't think I have one in the kitty right now that we've been discussing, except for Dr. Ford's, which I want to make sure she gets a chance to talk about here. And then ILD Gate 14, the proposal construction class, you all came in, most of you came in under that class. That's a wonderful course as well. Dr. Ford, talk about that class. I think it's really, really great.
I just wanted to let people know that we have developed a course that is called Seminar in Interdisciplinary Leadership Theory, I believe, so that there would actually be a course that focuses on leadership theory overall. We anticipate offering that sometime in the spring of 2019. So for those of you who are currently in the program, that would not be required. It will be an elective if you choose to take it. Well, this won't affect you. I think it's fall 19 going forward. It will be required for people coming in over a year from now, but it would be added to the elective options for people already in the program. That's the only one I can think of.
Off the top of my head, that's the only one as well. And I know Shannon and Lydia are working really hard and really diligently to get a really solid handle on which electives will be offering which term, so you all know that ahead of time. So registration, you'll know what's offered to be able to plan that, plan a study well in advance. But Kevin, off the top, I'm trying to think of anything else that's popping right now, but that's nothing huge. Nothing, no. I don't think so. If there is, I've completely lost track of it, and that's scary. So
I can't think of any.
Okay, good. Okay, good, Dr. Ford. Any other questions, hot topics, things? You've got our attention. We'd love to talk with you. This is the point of these JayTalks. There's 3 faculty sitting in our respective spaces. Let us know how we can be most helpful to you, off topic, on topic now. This is the intention, is to make this feel like family. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions coming in, so we're happy to answer those if they come up. Shoot us an email. We're in the office often, all the time. We're really happy to help. So again, reach out if you would to your social media channels. Remind folks of these webinars. They are recorded. We do post them in the EDD Student Resource Center. But to get those questions answered, popping in live, I think is great, and we get to see you. And that's, I know, as for you all, it can be hard to be far away. I think for us as well, it's hard not to see you too. So thank you for the chance for letting us to see you and talk with you. And as always, take good care, and we will see you on the discussion board. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good.
Dr. Ford, I think you have to stop the record button. I think you started it, so you're the only one that can stop it.
Okay, I was just giving people a second. Okay,
Yeah.
will do. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.